"No one will ever marry you, fat girl." Those words nearly destroyed me. But 2 hours later, I walked out with a diamond ring. My name is Stella Marshall, 32, from Boston. For years, I lived under my mother's cruel spotlight. Every pound judged, every achievement ignored. But this Christmas dinner was different. Because this time, I wasn't alone. I had news she couldn't silence. A miracle she could never take away. Before I tell you how it unfolded, where are you watching from tonight? Drop your city in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of truth and survival. Because the night she tried to break me was the night I rose. Growing up as Diane Marshall's daughter meant living under constant scrutiny. Every glance from her felt like judgment. Every word a reminder I wasn't enough. My earliest memories aren't birthday parties or bedtime stories. They're of my mother pulling away plates, telling me, "A lady always watches what she eats." I was only 7, too young to understand shame, yet already drowning in it. Dad was the buffer, my quiet champion. Jack Marshall, with warm brown eyes that mirrored mine, slipped me cookies when she wasn't looking. "You're beautiful as you are," he whispered, trying to soften the blows I couldn't deflect. When he died of a heart attack, I was 12 and suddenly unprotected. Her criticism became sharper, more frequent, more public. "Lose 20 pounds before school. No boy will ever dance with you." At the mall, she'd compare me to mannequins. At restaurants, she'd order salad for me, telling waiters, "My daughter is watching her figure." What she meant was, my daughter embarrasses me. My straight A's, debate trophies, science ribbons, all invisible beside the number on a scale. "What good is being smart?" she sneered. "If no one wants to look at you?" Amanda, my younger sister, never knew that weight. Naturally thin, she glided through childhood, with approval that felt like sunlight I could never touch. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" became the refrain of my adolescence. I tried. God, I tried. I starved myself sophomore year, lost 30 pounds, watched her eyes soften for the first time. But when the weight crept back, her disappointment returned, sharper than ever. "I thought you were finally responsible. I guess I expected too much." So I ran. Northwestern University, 800 miles away. Not for prestige, but for distance. A chance to breathe without her shadow pressing down. In Chicago, I started to rebuild. Friends saw more than my size. Professors valued my voice. And for a while I believed escape was possible. But holidays dragged me back. Her first words never changed. "You've gained weight." Not hello, not I missed you, just that. By graduation, I stopped hoping for approval. Stopped starving for her praise. Stopped believing I could ever be enough. Still, one question haunted me. If my own mother couldn't love me, how could anyone else? I thought distance would save me. But her voice always found a way back. Chicago became my sanctuary. 800 miles of freedom. At last, no one watched every bite or every breath. I built a life of my own. A Wicker Park apartment and morning light. A chubby orange tabby named Winston who loved me without condition. Friends who saw me, not my size, not my shadow. Jasmine, my neighbor turned best friend, never mentioned calories. She praised my humor, my kindness, my cooking. "You listen like no one else," she said one night. For the first time, I believed her. Still, food was comfort and punishment. Late night takeout. Then guilt louder than hunger. Childhood habits don't unravel overnight. Therapy helped. Dr. Cooper was gentle and unflinching. "You're trying to fill emptiness with food," she said. "Your mother's approval can't be earned by losing weight." That truth cracked something open. If no diet could buy her love, I could stop paying. Day by day, I practiced new rituals. Looked in the mirror without turning away. Whispered, "You are enough," until it felt less foreign. Work flourished. I climbed the ladder, closed deals, built campaigns. Yet I was still the girl who thought love must be earned, who feared it could be revoked without warning. Dating mirrored that fear. Good men drifted away when my walls stayed high. "One day you'll let someone in," Jasmine promised. I wanted to believe her. By 30, I had what she swore I'd never have. A career, a home, a circle that felt like family. Still, December loomed like a storm cloud. Holidays dragged me back into her gravity. Same house, same remarks, same ritual of survival. Then James Fletcher entered my life. At a Denver conference, he sought me out for my ideas. He asked me to dinner. No name tags, no pretense. It was a date. Confident without arrogance, successful without cruelty. He listened. His 9-year-old daughter, Lily, welcomed me without hesitation. With James, I felt something new. Not tolerance, not conditional affection, but real love. A year later, on a rainy Sunday, he knelt in my kitchen. Ring in hand, eyes steady. "Stella, will you marry me?" I said yes, through tears, disbelief, old scars softening. For the first time, I felt chosen. Not in spite of who I was, but because of it. That Christmas, I carried more than presents home. I carried proof. Her prophecy was a lie. And the night she repeated it, James was already at the door. The doorbell sliced through the silence. No one moved. "I'll get it," I said, pushing back my chair. My legs shook on the way to the door. I breathed once and opened it. James stood there early, snow in his hair. His smile vanished when he saw my face. "What happened?" he asked, reaching for me. I couldn't answer. The lump in my throat was a fist. "The window was open," he murmured. I heard enough. Anger flashed in his eyes, steady and protective. "Together," he said. One word. A promise. We walked to the dining room, hand in hand. Conversation died the instant he appeared. "You must be Diane," James said to my mother. "Stella has told me so much." She straightened like a judge. "James, we were just discussing you." "Yes," he said evenly. "I gathered that." He set the flowers down and turned to me. He lifted my left hand, gentle and sure. A twist, and the diamond caught light. Gasps ran down the table. My mother went pale. For once, she had no words. "I think this is the moment," James said. "Everyone, I asked Stella to marry me, and she said yes." Chairs scraped. Amanda hugged me hard. "Oh my God, that's amazing." Questions tumbled like confetti. "How did you meet? When's the wedding? Let us see the ring." Everyone celebrated, except my mother. Her mouth pinched. Her knuckles whitened on the glass. "She'll look lovely in pink," she said. "It's slimming." The room froze again. My hand tightened in James's. He didn't miss a beat. "Stella will be breathtaking in whatever she chooses," he said. "Tonight, that emerald green takes my breath." Aunt Sarah stepped in. "Those are Jack's eyes," she said. "Just like her father's." My mother tried to regain control. "So, is this serious or passing through?" James set down his glass. "Diane, I love your daughter as she is. And no one ever speaks to her like that." Silence spread, heavy and total. Amanda squeezed my hand under the table. I finally breathed. I stood, voice steady. "James and I are leaving now. We have plans." "You just arrived," my mother protested. "We haven't had dessert." "I've had my fill," I said. Everyone heard the double meaning. We turned toward the foyer. Snow waited beyond the glass. Freedom waited with it. What came next wasn't dessert. It was the first boundary of my life. We left in silence, snow hissing under the tires. My hands still shook. James kept one on the wheel, one on mine. "Breathe," he said softly. "In and out. I'm here." At the hotel, Lily waited in pajamas and wonder. She hugged me hard. "I ordered extra dumplings," she whispered. "Dad says they're your favorite." Kindness undid me. Tears finally fell, hot and cleansing. We ate from paper cartons, watched Elf, laughed at lines we knew by heart. The room warmed. My chest loosened. Later, when Lily slept between us, James turned to me. "I meant every word," he said. "No one speaks to you like that." "Not ever again." I stared at the ceiling's soft shadows. "I'm done playing along," I said. "I'm done shrinking to fit." He nodded. "Whatever you choose, I'm with you." Morning brought the calls. First one, then another, then 5. Voicemail after voicemail. Diane's voice was cool, composed. "Call me back, Stella. We need to discuss wedding plans." June at the club would be tasteful. My jaw clenched. Wedding plans? After last night? I didn't call back. Not yet. I needed my ground before battle. Therapy voice in my head. Name what you need. State your boundary. Keep it simple. Hold the line. I dialed at noon. She answered on the first ring. "Stella, finally. About the menu. This isn't about dessert." I cut in. "It's about respect." Silence. Then frosty offense. "I don't appreciate your tone." "I don't appreciate your cruelty," I said. "You humiliated me at your table. You called me fat girl. You declared I'd never be married." 10 minutes before my fiancé arrived. A sharp inhale. I didn't know he was there. Would it have changed the words? My voice didn't waver. Or only the volume. Another silence, tighter. "I spoke without thinking," she said. "You know I want the best for you." "No," I said. "You want the appearance of the best. And I'm done paying for appearances." I took a breath. Set the terms. Coffee, neutral ground. Saturday, 10 a.m., Wellesley Cafe. 1 hour, just us. "That's not enough time," she protested. "And it should be at the house." "It's enough," I said. "And not at your stage." Her offense crackled through the line. "Stella, I'm your mother." "I'm an adult," I said. "And I'm getting married. If you want a seat at my wedding..." You respect my boundaries. Sharp quiet. Then the smallest concession. Saturday at 10, she said. Click. I stood by the window, watching snow turn to light. James wrapped an arm around me. How'd it go? I set the terms, I said. And she agreed. He smiled, weary but proud. That's a start. I pressed my forehead to the glass. For years I'd begged for kindness. Today I demanded it. It felt like learning a new language. It tasted like air. I turned from the window. We're doing this my way, I said. Neutral ground. No dress talk. No diets. Only truth. James kissed my forehead. Then truth it is. I packed the ring box back into my purse. Not to hide. To remember. To carry proof of my life. Chicago called us home. But first, coffee with Diane. Not a plea. Not a performance. A reckoning. I set the boundary. And for once, she'd meet me on my terms. Wellesley Cafe buzzed. I took a window seat, neutral ground. She arrived on time. We ordered lattes. I want to apologize for Christmas, she said. I spoke without thinking. That's the problem, I answered. It hasn't just been Christmas. The world is cruel to heavy women, she said. I thought I could protect you. By teaching me to hate myself, I kept my voice steady. You called me fat girl. You said no one would marry me. She flinched. I shouldn't have said that. I was scared. For me or of me. She stared at the window. I was that girl once, she whispered. Heavier, mocked. I lost weight, never the fear. For the first time, she sounded human. I'm not you, I said. I don't need saving from my body. What do you need? She asked. Boundaries, I said. No comments about weight, diets, slimming colors. Ask about my work and joy. If you slip, I leave. She breathed in, breathed out. I can do that. I'll try. And I am sorry. It landed seed, not eraser. September came with roses. James waited under the arch, steady and bright. Lily smoothed her dress. My mother arrived in sea glass blue. No corrections, only a velvet box, my grandmother's earrings. During vows, James said, no one diminishes you, not even the voice in your head. I promised him partnership and myself gentleness. At the reception, she asked about the quartet and the view. No calorie talk. One quiet dance. Your father would be proud, she said. But I had new music, boundaries and chosen family. A year later, we hosted Christmas. Lily passed rolls without apology. James carved turkey. My mother told a story about Dad. I cleared the plates and looked around. Not perfect. Real. Mine. If family words cut you, choose softer ones for yourself. Have you lived this? Tell me in the comments. If this found you when you needed it, hit subscribe. You're not alone.
The wheels touched down with a shudder. I didn't flinch. The hum of the cabin, the scrape of luggage overhead, the cheerful chatter of passengers gathering their things, it all moved around me like static. I stayed seated, phone in hand, the folded flag still tucked in my carry-on beneath the seat. Liam would have hated the turbulence but loved the precision of the landing. He always said flying was just controlled falling. I never found that comforting. The message was already typed. Simple. No punctuation, no exclamation points. Just flight lands at 4 p.m. Can someone pick me up? I sent it to the family group chat. The one with the heart emoji next to the name. The one they used for birthday reminders and last-minute potlucks. I didn't expect fanfare. I didn't expect a parade. I just didn't want to stand at curbside, alone, after burying the man I loved in a country I'd never meant to visit. The reply came fast. Kara, we're busy. Try Uber. 2 minutes later, my mother chimed in. Mom, you should have planned better. No, how was the funeral? No, we're so sorry. No, we're proud of him. Just that cold, clean, clipped. I stared at the screen. My fingers hovered. For a second, I thought about calling. Not to argue, just to ask. Again. Maybe softer this time. But then I remembered the silence at the gravesite, the empty folding chairs on either side of me. I typed back, no worries. I powered down my phone, slid it into my coat pocket, and stood as the line began to shuffle forward. I didn't need a ride anymore. I didn't need anything from them at all. By the time I stepped through the terminal and out into the crisp, late afternoon light, I already knew who'd be waiting. Germany was cold in a way I hadn't expected. Not the kind that bites through skin, but the kind that settles deep, like grief. The air outside the chapel didn't move. Everything was still. Uniforms formed clean rows, boots planted into gravel, faces unreadable, except mine. They asked if I wanted music. I said no. Liam didn't like performances. They asked if I wanted words. I said I couldn't carry them. So they gave me silence, and precision, and 21 sharp cracks through the sky. The flag was folded so tightly, it felt like stone in my hands. I didn't cry when they handed it to me. I had already done that on the flight, in the sterile hotel room, in the bathroom between meetings with the liaison officer. What broke me wasn't the ceremony. It was the empty chairs beside me, reserved rows with names printed neatly, untouched. One for Kara, one for my mother, one for whoever else had once called Liam family. When the last salute was given and the last rifle lowered, a Marine stepped closer, young, maybe mid-20s, face steady. She didn't smile. She didn't linger, just leaned in close enough for her voice to reach only me. "We'll be there when you land." I nodded, though I didn't fully understand what she meant. Then again, maybe she didn't mean for me to. Later that evening, back at the base guest quarters, I opened my bag to pack the flag. Nestled beside it was a small card. No name, just an address and a contact number. The last line said, "Escort arranged upon arrival. You won't be alone." And I wasn't. Because when I stepped out of the terminal, coat zipped high, flag gripped tight, I saw them. The sliding doors parted, and the noise hit me like a wave honking horns, luggage wheels scraping pavement, families shouting greetings through rolled-down windows. I walked past it all. No one called my name. No one waved from across the pickup lane, and I didn't slow down to look. I kept walking until I saw it. A black SUV idled by the curb, spotless and still. The front passenger stepped out first, a tall woman in full dress blues, heels clicking sharply against concrete. Then came a second, older, with silver hair neatly pinned, her posture straight as a rail. The third, a man, younger than both, already moving toward me with calm purpose. No one spoke. He reached for my suitcase. I didn't resist. I just let go. The woman opened the rear door and nodded once. I stepped forward, flag tight against my chest. It felt heavier now, not just with memory, but with meaning. Inside, the vehicle was warm, silent. I settled into the leather seat without adjusting anything. The older woman closed the door behind me, then circled around and took the driver's seat. We pulled away smoothly, like they had done this before, because maybe they had, through the window. I watched as other passengers embraced arms tangled, faces buried in coats, tears caught mid-laugh. A man lifted a toddler into the air. A college girl clung to her father's neck. I faced forward. No one asked me how the flight was. No one asked what had happened overseas. They didn't need to. Their presence said enough. The absence of small talk wasn't awkward. It was deliberate. It made space for something heavier. At the first red light, the Marine in the passenger seat turned just slightly toward me. Not to speak. Just enough for me to feel the air shift. I tightened my grip on the flag and closed my eyes. The kind of stillness that settled over me wasn't peace. Not yet. But it was the closest I'd been in days. I didn't check my phone. I didn't reopen the group chat. I stared straight ahead as the city blurred past, and waited for the rest of the world to catch up. That night, I didn't turn on the TV. I sat by the window of the hotel room, still in the same clothes, the flag folded neatly on the armchair beside me. The city moved below cars snaking through intersections, headlights gliding over damp pavement. I didn't eat dinner. I didn't answer any messages. I didn't send any. I didn't need to. At exactly 9 p.m., the screen in millions of living rooms flickered to a still shot me, stepping into a black SUV, 3 Marines in full dress behind me. The news anchor's voice came steady and low. The kind they use when something tragic but dignified has occurred. Tonight, a widow returned home from her husband's military funeral overseas. She arrived to no family at the gate, but she was not alone. They showed the clip in full, me walking through the terminal, past families reuniting, through the sliding doors, into the care of uniformed strangers. The camera held long enough for the folded flag to be visible in my arms. Then, as I stepped into the SUV, the Marines took position behind me, forming a silent wall. The screen shifted to a single page, the note I'd written hours earlier and handed to the station's producer without fanfare. If you find yourself alone at the edge of grief, don't look back. Look for who steps forward. M.L. They didn't say my full name, but they didn't have to. I could imagine the exact moment the story aired in my mother's living room. I knew which cabinet held her wine glass, and I could almost hear it clink against the counter. I knew my sister's condo would be dark, but for the flicker of the TV. I knew what it sounded like when silverware hit ceramic, when silence filled a room after the story you buried found a way to speak. None of them had texted, not yet, but the silence that had once protected them was no longer theirs. It belonged to everyone now. The anchor signed off. The image faded, and somewhere behind the broadcast, behind the formality and uniforms and quotes, the story had begun to shift, not because I had demanded it, but because truth doesn't need permission to be heard. The text came in just before midnight. Kara, was that you on the news? Not, I'm sorry, not, I didn't know. Not even, are you okay? Just a 6-word question, brittle and hollow, as if the doubt might spare her some guilt. I didn't answer. I locked the screen and set the phone face down on the bedside table. A few minutes later, I opened the group chat out of habit. I hadn't planned to, but there it was, still pinned at the top, still named family, though the word felt unfamiliar now. The last message was still mine. No worries. I scrolled up. Kara's reply. My mother's critique. Nothing more. Then I noticed the updated group photo. Someone had changed it. A new image filled the corner, me and Kara, maybe 7 or 8 years old, standing side by side at some 4th of July parade, holding tiny flags. The caption underneath was her doing. I could tell, family first, always. I stared at it longer than I meant to, not because it touched me, but because the disconnect was so complete it felt almost surreal. They hadn't shown up at the airport. They hadn't called after the funeral. They hadn't even texted until the city already had my name in headlines. Below the image, someone had commented you didn't even pick her up. It had 10 likes, then 15, then more. The replies were piling in. Strangers. I watched the number climb. Unread. Then I pressed and held the chat until the menu popped up. I selected delete, confirmed it. Let it vanish. I didn't feel lighter, but I did feel clean. I moved back to the window. Same city, same lights. The flag still rested on the armchair, still folded into that impossible triangle. I wondered if they knew what it weighed. The email came in at 12:37 a.m. Subject follow-up from Channel 8, Body Men's Loxley. Thank you for your quiet strength earlier this evening. We've had an overwhelming response to your segment. If you'd be open to a follow-up, we'd love to hear more from you. No pressure. Just let us know. No pressure. They didn't know how strange that phrase sounded after everything. I stared at the blinking cursor in the reply box, then closed the laptop. It wasn't a question of attention. It was a question of ownership. The world had seen the edges, but the center what it had cost to get through the airport with my chin up. What it had felt like to stand beside an empty chair at Liam's gravesite, none of that had been told. And maybe it was time. The interview wasn't live. That helped. They asked if I wanted makeup. I declined. Did I want to prep my answers? No. Did I want to bring someone with me I already had? Liam was in every word I planned to speak. The studio wasn't what I expected small. Quiet, with soft lighting and nothing staged. Just a single chair, a table, 2 microphones, and a woman with gentle eyes who introduced herself only as Harper. "We can stop any time," she said. "You don't have to say anything you don't want to." I nodded. They did a mic check, adjusted the camera once, and then we started. Harper leaned forward, not as a journalist, but as someone who had read the story and knew there was more beneath it. Her first question came softly. "What happened when you landed?" I took a breath. Not deep, just enough. "I buried my husband with honor," I said, and I came home to silence. She didn't interrupt, didn't fill the quiet. She let the sentence sit. I told her about the folded flag, the empty chairs at the funeral, the black SUV waiting outside the terminal. I told her about the Marines, how they stood behind me, not out of duty, but respect. She asked about the group chat. I shook my head. "I won't name them. This isn't about shame. It's about absence and presence." I said it calmly, not with practiced eloquence, but with the steadiness that comes when a wound has been felt long enough to scar. "People think grief is loud," I said, "but it's not. Grief is what you hear when everyone you counted on says nothing." The segment lasted 12 minutes. No music, no dramatic edits. Just my voice, unembellished. Just the truth, left to stand on its own. When we finished, Harper reached across the table and squeezed my hand. She didn't say anything. I was grateful for that. Later that evening, the piece aired, prime time, right between a local weather update and some story about a mayor's speech, and somewhere between those two things, I watched my own life unfold on screen quietly, clearly, without apology. The phone started buzzing less than an hour later, but I didn't check it. Instead, I opened a blank notebook and wrote 5 words at the top of a clean page: "The Welcome Project Phase 1, the morning after the interview aired. I woke to more emails than I'd ever seen in my inbox. Some were short thank you for saying what I couldn't. Others were long, winding letters from widows, military spouses, and even civilians who'd never worn a uniform but knew what silence felt like. A veteran from Arizona wrote, "I remember coming home to an empty terminal. You put words to something I buried years ago. There were flowers, too. I never said where to send them, but they arrived anyway, white lilies, navy ribbon." A folded note that read simply, "For the courage we all needed." I didn't know what to do with it all at first. I wasn't trying to start something. I was just trying to finish the conversation my family refused to have, but the messages kept coming. And then someone asked, "Do you know if there's a way to meet people like you at the airport? Just anyone to show up." That was the moment it shifted. I opened that notebook again, wrote down one sentence. No one should come home to silence. Within 48 hours, I had a name, The Welcome Project. By the end of the week, I had a website, basic but functional. A friend of Liam's helped build it. Volunteers began signing up from different cities. A woman from Charlotte offered to organize the first pickup team. Someone from Chicago sent a donation for signage. Day 10, JFK. The first pickup. A woman named Anna stood just outside arrivals, holding a hand-lettered sign. "We've got you." The photo made its way online before I even saw it. A military spouse, just home from burying her partner in Kuwait, stood weeping in Anna's arms. They hadn't met before. It didn't matter. That night, Anna sent me a message. She said it was the first time since the funeral someone looked her in the eyes and said her name. I put my phone down and wrote thank you notes until my wrist hurt. Then I opened a new page and circled a city. Next stop, Atlanta. The vigil was held at the city park, beneath the wide elms, just before sunset. No stage, no speeches, just rows of folding chairs, paper lanterns, and candles handed out at the gate. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. I stood near the back, hood drawn, hands tucked deep into my coat. Beside me, a woman I didn't know clutched a candle with both hands and whispered a name I couldn't hear. Near the front, a girl stepped forward to sing. She couldn't have been older than 16. Her voice cracked on the third line, but she didn't stop. "I'll carry you home," she sang, breath trembling, and every note landed like it had somewhere to go. People around me started crying. Not loud sobs, just quiet tears that slid down cheeks like they'd been waiting. I didn't cry, but my throat ached with the weight of what I wouldn't release. Then I saw them, across the crowd, near the edge of the trees. Kara stood still, arms folded, shoulders stiff, and beside her, our mother, wearing black, hair pinned back, the same solemn expression she wore at every church function growing up. They weren't on the program, they hadn't donated, they hadn't helped light a single candle. They just watched. They didn't move closer, they didn't wave. And I didn't either. Someone in front of me recognized my name and clapped a hand on my shoulder. A ripple of applause followed, small at first, then stronger. I stood there and let it pass through me, not for attention, just for truth. Because in that moment, surrounded by strangers, I felt more seen than I ever had at a family dinner, and somewhere behind the line of light, they saw it too. The text came the next morning. I was sitting on the floor, surrounded by brown boxes and rolls of tape, sorting shampoo bottles from granola bars. The apartment smelled like cardboard and lavender. Kara. Didn't think it'd matter this much. I didn't know how to help. I read it 3 times, not because I didn't understand it, but because I knew exactly what it was. A sentence that reached out, but stopped short of anything real. "No, I'm sorry. No, I should have been there." Just an offering of confusion. Like that might somehow soften the shape of what she didn't do. I set the phone down and stared at the open care kit beside me. Inside, a handwritten card, a travel blanket, chapstick, tissues, instant coffee, and a small print that read, "You are not alone." I picked the phone back up, typed, "You left me when I needed you," deleted it, typed, "I hope you never feel what I felt," deleted that too. Then I sat still for a moment, the kind of still that doesn't ache anymore, just lingers. Finally, I wrote, "You made your choice." So did I. Sent. I didn't wait for a reply. I knew there wouldn't be one. Or, if there was, it would come too late and say too little. And I didn't need it anymore. I sealed the box, stacked it by the door, and reached for another. Because some things don't get fixed with words. They get transformed with action, with names you don't know yet, with hands that reach without asking why you're broken. And that day, surrounded by care kits and shipping labels, I wasn't waiting to be healed. I was already building what came after. The article came out in early spring. I didn't know it was going to be front page until I saw it through the window of the corner newsstand, my photo printed large above the fold. Head high, hand resting on the shoulder of a young woman holding a folded flag. Her eyes were red. Her smile was fragile. The headline read, "From Grief to Ground Crew. How One Widow Changed Coming Home." I bought 3 copies. Not out of pride, just to remember where it began. A week later, I was invited to speak at a local memorial for military families. I almost declined, but something in me knew it was time. They handed me the microphone. I didn't bring notes. I came home alone. I said, but I didn't stay that way. I didn't talk about my sister. I didn't talk about my mother. I talked about the weight of absence and what it feels like when strangers become structure, when grief is held by hands you've never touched before. There was no applause when I finished, just a stillness that felt like respect. Afterward, I drove straight to the airport. No one asked me to. It just felt right. The 6:45 arrival from Dallas had one name on our list, a woman whose husband had died in a training accident 6 weeks earlier. I stood by the gate with a sign that said her name and 4 words beneath it, "We've got you now." And when she came around to the corner, eyes scanning, shoulders tight, I smiled. Because this time, I wasn't waiting for anyone to show up for me. I was already there. I didn't want to go. That should have been the first sign. But Bryony had called 3 times that week, and when my father followed with a crisp, "It would mean a lot if you showed up." I gave in, like always. The estate was blinding gaslight chandeliers, polished silver, and floor-to-ceiling windows that framed Charleston's marshes like artwork. Emery's birthday party felt more like a coronation. Everyone glittered, everyone belonged, except me. I stayed close to the edges of the room, smiling when necessary, nodding politely when spoken to. That had become my role in this family pleasant silence. At dinner, I offered to help the staff pass dishes, mostly to give myself something to do. I carried a plate of seared duck in one hand, a glass of wine in the other, weaving behind chairs with practiced care. And then it happened. My heel caught the edge of the rug. Just a half-second slip. But that was enough. The wine arced through the air deep red against Emery's starched white shirt. It struck just below his collarbone. Gasps followed. Then an awful hush. My eyes met his. But before I could say a word, Bryony stood, her fist connected with my cheek in one clean, practiced swing. Sharp pain bloomed across my face as I stumbled back, wine glass shattering against the tile. "You stupid maid," she hissed. "Wipe it up." Silence held the room in a chokehold. 50 people. No one moved. I turned to my father, blood in my mouth, heart thrumming. He didn't flinch. "Apologize," he said flatly. "Or get out." Not, "Are you all right?" Not even, "Why did she hit you?" I stood straighter, brushing glass from my skirt with shaking hands. My lip throbbed. My pride bled. I didn't apologize. I didn't say a word. I walked out the front door, heels echoing down the marble steps, the night air cold against my skin. I didn't cry. Not yet. By the time I reached my car, the sky was soft with stars, and I could still hear Bryony's voice in my ears. When I got home, I saw the missed calls, all 56 of them. Bryony was always the golden one, the polished one, the daughter who smiled for the camera with perfect posture and said the right thing at the right time. I was just there. The quiet girl who read too much and disappeared in family photos like a smudge in the corner. I learned early that love in our house was conditional, measured by presentation, not presence. When Bryony won state debate, there was a dinner party. When I got a scholarship, my father skimmed the letter and asked if I'd sent a thank you email. There was never malice, just neglect polished into a tradition. And then Emery came along, sliding into our lives with tailored suits and coastal charm. My father adored him finally, a man worthy of the Hartley name. Bryony beamed at his side like the final puzzle piece had clicked into place. I watched from the edges. Again. But I remembered the restaurant, that summer evening when Emery snapped his fingers at a young waiter, then shoved the boy aside when his wine came too warm. I caught Bryony's eye that night. She saw it too. We never spoke about it. Maybe that's when the silence started costing more than dignity. Tonight was its invoice. Back in my apartment, I dropped my coat and collapsed onto the couch. My cheek ached, but it was nothing compared to the feeling in my chest, like something had cracked not just from Bryony's fist, but from the hollowness that followed, the way no one chased after me, the way my father didn't blink. My phone buzzed again. 56 missed calls. They hadn't said a word when I bled on marble floors, but now they were calling again and again. I stared at the screen, heart pounding, then set it face down on the table. They didn't want me back. They just didn't want me talking. The texts started just after midnight. From Bryony. "You overreacted. Emery's shirt is ruined. You need to fix this." From my father. "Come to the house tomorrow. Let's talk like adults." Even Emery had the audacity to write. "You embarrassed my fiancé in front of important people. Be smart about how you handle this." None of them asked if I was okay. Not one apology. No acknowledgement that Bryony had struck me or that my father had watched it happen and done nothing. And then the voicemail came. Charles's voice was calm, even measured. "Leora, don't escalate this. It'll ruin you." Not him. "You know how these things go, gossip. Misunderstandings. Be reasonable. Let it go. Let it go." as if the impact of Bryony's fist could be reasoned away, as if the silence that followed wasn't already louder than any slap. I sat in the quiet for a long time, phone in my lap, staring at the blinking light like it might offer some better version of the words I'd just heard. Then, without thinking, I reached into my purse to grab some tissues and felt something soft, slightly damp. A cloth napkin. I'd taken it with me without realizing. It was pale ivory now, blotched with dried wine and a small smear of blood from my lip. I unfolded it slowly, hands shaking. A stupid thing to keep. But I didn't throw it away. I folded it again, more carefully this time, and placed it in the drawer next to my bed. Not because I needed the reminder, but because it was proof of what happened, of what they were capable of. Then I pulled out the old notebook I hadn't touched in over a year. Its spine was worn, its pages spotted with ink from when I used to write late at night, mostly to stay sane. I opened to a clean page. Emory, December 10th, wine, slap, threat. I paused, then added, not a one-time thing. Just the first time they made it public. I kept writing. Details, words, glances, dates. If they were going to keep calling, they needed to understand something. This time, I was listening, and this time, I was keeping score. The old notebook was tucked away at the back of my drawer, its leather cover cracked and worn from years of neglect. I hadn't touched it in a long time, not since the nights I used it to vent, to stay sane when the walls felt like they were closing in. But now, I pulled it out and opened to a fresh page, determined to write everything down. I began with the small things. The subtle injuries I'd suffered over the years, Bryony's cutting remarks disguised as jokes, the way she undermined me at family gatherings, the dismissive glances when I spoke up. There was the time she told our aunt I'd never be anything more than a quiet shadow, the time Emory made a cruel joke about my clothes, masked behind a smile so charming no one else noticed the jab. Then there was my father, his quiet refusals, the way he minimized my accomplishments, the casual suggestion that my nonprofit work was a phase and I should consider something more practical. Each detail was like a puzzle piece forming a picture I'd been too afraid to see. I wrote about the worst night, the night they decided I needed help, but not the kind that heals. After I'd cried at a fundraiser, overcome by grief I'd buried for years, they staged an intervention. They pushed me to see a therapist, not out of concern, but to silence me. Too much emotion isn't becoming of our family, Bryony had said coldly. From then on, I buried my pain deeper, speaking less and shrinking further as the ink flowed. I realized my silence had never been peace. It had been their weapon, and breaking it was my first act of rebellion. My phone buzzed. A message from Eden, a friend I hadn't spoken to in months. Be careful. Emory's people are building a case. They're calling you unstable. The threat settled over me like a cold shadow. This wasn't just about damage control anymore. It was a calculated attempt to erase me. But I had already begun writing my own story, one they wouldn't control. And this time, I was ready to fight. The decision to go to the legal clinic felt like crossing a line I'd never imagined crossing. I wasn't sure what I expected, maybe a lecture, maybe a sympathetic ear, but what I found was something I hadn't realized I needed a witness. The clinic was tucked between a second-hand bookstore and a dry cleaner's. Nothing like the polished law offices I was used to hearing about. When I walked in, the fluorescent lights buzzed softly, and the scent of old paper filled the air. The receptionist handed me a clipboard and gestured to a waiting area filled with worn chairs and anxious faces. After a brief wait, a woman called my name. Marlene Yates was older, her silver hair pulled back in a tight bun, her sharp eyes framed by thick glasses. She wore no makeup, just a simple blouse and slacks, but her presence filled the room with a quiet authority. I sat down across from her, hands trembling as I tried to gather the words. The story spilled out Emory, the birthday party, the slap, the silence that followed. I didn't hold back, letting years of frustration and pain tumble free. Marlene listened without interruption, her gaze steady and unjudging. When I finished, she leaned back and said something that surprised me. "This isn't just dysfunction, Leora. It's coercive control." I blinked, unsure I'd heard right. She continued, "They've isolated you, manipulated you into silence. The violence is only one part of it. The real damage is in how they control your story and your options." I swallowed hard. For years, I'd blamed myself for not speaking up sooner. But hearing those words, I felt a small flicker of understanding. Marlene reached into a filing cabinet and pulled out a thin folder. "I know the Hartleys," she said quietly. "Years ago, I represented an employee who tried to expose some of their business practices. They crushed him with lawsuits and intimidation. I lost the case, but I kept the records." She slid the folder across the desk. The papers inside were filled with legal jargon, letters, and notes, evidence of a family used to bending the rules. "I never throw away things that might be useful later," she said. I stared at the folder, heart pounding. Maybe the truth wasn't buried. Maybe it was just waiting for someone willing to fight. And maybe, this time, they'd picked the wrong woman. The days after my meeting with Marlene turned into a blur of research and quiet determination. I spent hours in the public records office and online databases, hunting for anything that could expose the cracks beneath the Hartleys' polished facade. Marlene's advice echoed in my mind. Look for the pattern, not just the incident. It wasn't long before I found it. Emery's name was tied to a web of shell companies and trusts, a complicated network designed to hide assets and avoid scrutiny. One record caught my attention: a luxury condo in Charleston's historic district transferred into a blind trust just 2 days before the party. The timing was too precise to be coincidence. I printed everything out, organized the documents into neat folders, and prepared anonymous packages for 2 local reporters known for digging into Charleston's elite. I wasn't sure if they'd bite, but it was a start. I called Marlene to update her on my progress. Her voice was calm but firm. "He'll come after you, Leora." "Not publicly. He'll use the law as a weapon, restraining orders, defamation suits. You have to be ready." I nodded, swallowing the knot of fear rising in my throat. I told her my plan Christmas Eve, during Charles's annual charity gala, the night they celebrated their generosity while hiding their secrets in plain sight. The perfect time to send the packages out, to let the truth slip into the hands of those who mattered. Marlene didn't hesitate. "Then you have to be strong and smart, because once you pull that trigger, there's no turning back." I hung up and looked out the window at the cold, gray sky. The weight of what I was about to do pressed down on me, but beneath it, a spark of something new, a flicker of hope. The law had never been on my side before. Now, it was my weapon, and exposure might be the only protection I had left. I stood at the edge of the ballroom in a simple black dress, invisible by design. No one looked twice. That was the thing about people like the Hartleys once they'd decided you were irrelevant. They stopped seeing you altogether. The chandeliers above cast soft gold over everything. Waiters passed flutes of champagne. A string quartet played something delicate and forgettable. Charles stood near the stage, shaking hands, soaking in admiration like sunlight. At exactly 8:03 p.m., the first phone lit up, then another, and another. I watched the ripples spread furrowed brows, hushed murmurs, people turning to one another with widening eyes. Charles glanced at his phone, then again, slower this time. The muscles in his jaw tightened. Emery, halfway through some smug anecdote at the mic, went pale. He muttered something, dropped the microphone, and walked off stage. The quartet stopped playing. Then the agents appeared, calm, composed. They didn't raise their voices. They didn't need to. One handed Charles a subpoena in full view of the crowd. Cameras flashed. Someone gasped. Someone else started filming. Charles sputtered something about slander, about integrity, about enemies, but the room was no longer listening. I didn't stay for the rest. I didn't need to. By the time I reached the parking lot, the winter air felt less like punishment and more like breath. I walked to my car, each step steadier than the last. They had wanted me silent. Now, the whole city was watching. The new place was small, just one bedroom, cracked tile in the kitchen, and a view of the harbor if I leaned far enough out the window. But it was mine. No family photos on the walls, no echoes of old dinners or expectations pressed into the floorboards. I unpacked slowly, box by box. Each item I placed felt like a decision. What stays? What no longer belongs? I found the napkin again, still stained, tucked between papers I'd carried with me like armor. I didn't throw it away. I folded it carefully and slid it into a drawer. Not as a wound, but as a marker. The moment I stopped apologizing for being hit, I'd spent so long trying to mold myself into a version of someone they could tolerate quieter, smaller, less visible. It never worked. It was never meant to. The phone rang. I answered without thinking. It's happening. Marlene said, the charges are sticking, and the restraining order dropped this morning. I didn't speak for a moment, just held the phone, listening to the hum of a world that finally sounded different. They buried me in silence, I said softly, but I grew roots. There was a pause on the line. Then, good. Keep growing. I ended the call and sat by the window, watching the gulls skim the water like they'd never once asked for permission. In the quiet that followed, I realized something simple and sharp. This wasn't the end of anything. It was the first breath after the fire. The message came out of the blue. Can we meet? It's important. I didn't expect Bryony to come alone. I certainly didn't expect to find her looking fragile. Eyes rimmed with red, voice trembling beneath a mask of composure. She sat down across from me in the quiet cafe, fingers nervously twisting her coffee cup. Emery, she started, swallowing hard. He's changed, turned violent. I let her speak, even as the knot tightened in my chest. I thought he was only cruel to you, not to me. Her confession hung in the air, raw and unexpected. The sister I once envied, flawed, scared, trapped in the same web. But I wasn't the same girl who'd stood silent while she delivered that first blow. You stood by while I bled, I said quietly, eyes steady on hers. No anger, no blame, just truth. She looked away, biting her lip, tears threatening again. I didn't reach out. I didn't offer comfort. That bridge had burned years ago. When I stood, her hands fell from the cup, the moment slipping away between us. I walked out, leaving her behind in the dim light of the cafe. I didn't look back. Some apologies come too late to heal, and some wounds only mend when you stop carrying the weight of others. I walk into the legal clinic every week now, not as a visitor, but as a volunteer. I help women who sit where I once sat, quiet, unsure, afraid. We pore over papers, fill out forms, gather evidence. I see in their eyes what I once hid beneath layers of polite silence. On my desk, the glass box holds the stained napkin from that night. It's no longer a symbol of pain, but a testament proof that I survived, that I fought back. Mornings are my favorite. I sit by the window with a mug of strong coffee, watching the harbor stir awake, the gulls wheel overhead, indifferent and free. I think about that night, the punch, the silence, the exile. They told me to apologize, to make peace with their version of the truth. Instead, I gave them consequences, quiet, steady, inevitable. They thought I'd break. They thought my silence was weakness. They were wrong. Now, as the sun rises over the water, I'm building a life without permission, without apology. The girl they tried to silence is still here, stronger than ever, waiting,